Okay, McLarley, do you want to kick it off?
Sure thing. Thanks, Ingrid. Hello, everyone. I'm Mihlali Nzabo, the project manager for Futures Past. Thank you all for joining us. I believe we have like close to 100 of you guys with us today. As Ingrid has mentioned, today are joined by the six selected archives who will be doing short presentations of their proposed projects. And you guys will have an opportunity to ask questions after the presentations. So we'll be handling that. I'll just now perhaps maybe hand over to Electric South and IFAS to do introductions, and then from there we can move over to the archive. We can also introduce themselves and then kick off with their presentations. Maybe Ingrid, we can start off with you with introductions, move to Adwa, and then head over to Electric South, where Lauren and Sophia can introduce themselves.
Hi, yeah, of course. Thank you, McLarley. So, yeah, welcome. I'm Ingrid Kopp from Electric South. It's a pleasure to see so many people attending this webinar today. We're really excited about this project. We're really excited that there's so much interest, and this is a great opportunity for you to hear from the archives themselves and ask all the questions you have, and I'm sure there are many. So I think I'm going to not talk too long because you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from the archives, but I just want to introduce my colleague, Adjoa Nkoma.
Hi everyone, I'm Ajwa. I'm working on policy and research here at Electric South. I'm also leading the mapping study that is the second component of this project. I'll drop a link to it in the chat just for those who are interested. Please do complete our survey and reach out if you want to be a more detailed informant. And I'll hand it over to the next person.
Thanks. And I just want to add on the mapping study, we lots of you in this webinar, in fact, I'm sure all of you in this webinar, we really want to hear from you because we are really mapping this ecosystem and connecting these communities with this work that Adjoa is doing. So please check out the links that she's sending now because this is a really big part of this project. So Electric South is the implementing partner in this project, but all of this is coming from IFAS. So I think with that, Sophia, can I hand over to you?
Good morning. So I am Sophia Sarah. I'm head of new media at Institut Français South Africa in Johannesburg. And I am delighted to welcome you today to this webinar. As Ingrid said, this is a very important project for us. It is supported by the French Ministry of European and Foreign Affairs. And it is part of the rollout of culture activities through digital media. It is a big part of our work here in Southern Africa. So I leave the floor to my colleague, Lauren Fletcher.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces in the attendees. Very exciting. I'm the audiovisual project manager at IFAS. And with that, we jump in.
Okay, so that's, introduction is done. I just popped the mapping study link in the chat. We're also going to pop in I'm sure you all know it already, but the link to apply. The deadline is the 9th of November. So, and we will not extend that. So make sure that you get your applications in by the 9th, no later. And we'll also pop our email in there in case you have any other questions after this webinar. You can always get in touch with Electric South. So I think with that, Linda, can I hand over to you? We're going to start with the Gala Queer Archives. Over to you.
Hi, yeah, sorry, let me just get my screen up. Sorry, that is not the right screen.
It's good to hear that it's in your calendar. We can see that. Great.
Okay. All right, are we good?
We're great. Off you
Okay.
go.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Linda and I'm the archivist at the Gala Queer Archives. So just to very briefly explain who we are. Gala was founded in 1997. It was at a time, in South Africa when museums and cultural institutions and archives were being kind of reconceptualized in the wake of our new democracy. So the impetus was to make sure that queer histories weren't left out of that. So we act as a catalyst for the production, preservation, and dissemination. So collecting, preserving, and sharing of information about queer history, culture, and contemporary experiences as well. So we began as a project of the Wits University Archives, but we did become an independent nonprofit archive in 2007. So we are a nonprofit. We rely completely on donor funding. But we are still based on campus, so people often get confused. We rent space at Wits, but we are not part of the university. Maybe just another kind of practical thing to keep in mind is that due to space constraints and the lack of suitable storage for archival material where we are, our collections are stored off-site and ordered in as needed. So researchers, and that will include the creatives who join us on this project, do need to kind of consult with me beforehand and make an appointment. And I just wanted to maybe just spend one moment here just to maybe outline very quickly a few basic things about archives, because often people come to us and there's often some confusion around what is an archive, what is a library. So I promise I will be brief. But so just briefly to explain like the differences for those who aren't familiar with archives, who have never visited one. Unlike libraries, visitors can't just browse archives. Material is stored in boxes. Ours is stored offsite, but even archives that are on site, material is stored away. So it's not like you can come and just kind of peruse. But people often kind of just arrive and say, "Hey, can I look at the archive?" And also, yeah, so material is not on display. And also, unlike libraries, archive material can't be taken away. And I think this is true for almost all archives, is that material needs to be accessed on site and handled with care. So in addition to the archive, Gala also does a lot of other work. We involved in research, youth work, publications, education programs, film screenings, exhibitions, creative projects like these, conferences, dialogues. And we use these methods to try and bring the archive to the public so that they're not just sitting in boxes. And this is one of the reasons why we were so interested in joining this collaborative project. So the material that we have submitted to be worked with and workshopped for this project is from an organization called the Township AIDS Project. And I just want to briefly explain what that was, because otherwise it's not going to make any sense. So the Township AIDS Project, or TAP for short, was established in Soweto in 1989. It was a response to the lack of AIDS resources available to Black South Africans at the time. So remember, this was 1989. The government was really only just starting to wake up to the AIDS crisis. And prior to that, any kind of AIDS education or crisis management had really been left to the mostly white gay community. And as AIDS began to spread, the Township AIDS Project was established to try and kind of fill this knowledge gap where, as I say, prior to that, it was these white gay organizations, all their resources that they were using were coming directly from the global north. And so the TAP aimed to educate about AIDS and safe sex in languages and methods that were more relevant to South Africa. And although the TAP was not a gay organization, a number of those involved with the TAP, particularly in its early years, were gay academics, activists, and healthcare workers. Another person who was heavily involved in the TAP was queer anti-apartheid activist and gay rights activist Simon Nkoli. He was one of the founding members of the TAP. Most of the material that we have on the TAP is from his collection. He worked as a community educator and was in charge of the TAP's gay health program. And he also featured in the TAP Safe Sex poster campaign, and you can see one of those posters here. In 1992, Nkoli helped the TAP organize the first regional AIDS conference for lesbians and gay men in Soweto. The TAP really took off in 1992, however, when Enya Mataung, who became known as the AIDS Gogo of Soweto, took over. And she led the TAP until its closure due to a decline in funding in the early 2000s. So just to keep in mind that the bulk of this material is from the early 90s, and this was a few years before our first democratic elections, and very little was still known about AIDS at this time. And I'm saying AIDS because HIV/AIDS was not the term used at that time. So the TAP's approach to AIDS education, safe sex, and the inclusion of the gay and lesbian community was truly groundbreaking. Yeah, it was quite a moment. Okay, so now that you hopefully have a very basic idea, and I'm trying to be brief about what the TAP was, I'll just outline briefly the kinds of archival material that we have. So the first thing it's important to note is that the Township AIDS Project doesn't have an archive collection of its own. Rather, there's limited material spread across various collections. Most of them, as I say, most of it found in the Simon and Corley collection. And most of the materials are already digitized, and I'll be scanning the few remaining documents that are not digitized in the coming weeks. So creatives that come to the project, by the time they join, all material will be digitally available. And maybe this is also just good to keep in mind because we are closed for a month over December, January. So we can pass on kind of digital files for you to work on in that time. But if you do want to see and handle the physical material, as I mentioned earlier, appointment should be made. And I do encourage this because even if you just look at some of it, there's something about handling the physical material. The next point I want to make is that there isn't a sort of an established narrative of the Township AIDS Project. It's one of those projects, one of those things that is often just mentioned in passing in interviews or other collections, and no one's really told the story, which is one of the reasons that I want to. So in terms of the kinds of material that we have, it's a lot of organizational and planning documents, such as the sort of founding constitution of the organization, funding applications, newsletters, conference planning documents, workshop documents, correspondence, especially with other queer organizations at the time, a handful of photos, also a handful of interviews. I'm trying to find more people to interview. Unfortunately, almost everyone that was involved has passed away, but I am still trying to get more interviews. And then we also have video footage of the official opening of the Township AIDS Project. So although it started in 1989, in 1990, they had the official opening in Soweto at a community center. And this includes speeches, a community theater piece, and also performances from the Handspring Puppet Company. So I think this video material will also be quite an important kind of inspiration to the creatives who come to the project. And then lastly, we have educational safe sex materials that were produced by the Township AIDS Project. And this includes pamphlets, flyers, and posters. We also have much broader kind of material from this time in terms of HIV activism and education. So if people wanted to also access that to kind of compare the resources and things, yeah, we can go broader. It should be stressed that there is not a huge amount of material for the TAP. So creatives shouldn't feel daunted that they're going to be wading through huge amounts of archival material. And this was partly intentional, that I wanted to make it kind of a manageable amount of material. So you'll see on the slide and some of the previous ones, I've included some images of the kinds of material. And I want to end off just by briefly going over why I chose this material and why I think it's important, and some of the aims that we as Gala have.
Linda, you're pretty much out of time, so you'll just have to do it quite quickly.
Okay, I'll be super quick, sorry. So firstly, as I say, this is somewhat of an untold story. Secondly, we want to, I want to stress that it's not a prepackaged thing. Like whoever's going to come to this will have to kind of draw out a narrative, and obviously we'll help you with that. But just to end off to say that it's at a time when USAID has withdrawn, PEPFAR has been withdrawn, clinics are closing, especially clinics that serve the queer community. We're at a real risk of like the gains we've made in HIV/AIDS slipping. And in addition to that, the rise of kind of right-wing anti-gender movements across the globe. as well. So I wanted to kind of use highlighting this collection also just as a reminder of where we've come from, and not to sit back, to inspire community activism, to inspire activism around healthcare, HIV/AIDS, and queer rights. So it would be good if the project had this kind of told this historic story, but also maybe ended off with some kind of present linkage to what is happening now. Sorry, I went on so long.
Not a problem at all. It was great to hear more about the archive. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Music Crossroads in Malawi.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. So my name is Gaigai Matthews Mfune, and I am the director of Music Crossroads in Malawi. Mirao, you can share the screen from there of my presentation. Yeah, so we are based in Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi, and we are basically a non-profit making organization that uses the power of music, to empower young people and also to develop sustainable musical careers of our youth. We are also part of a wider network of musical organizations around the world called Jeunesse Musicale International. But in Southern Africa, we also have our own network called Music Crossroads Southern Africa. So we have partners in Zimbabwe and Mozambique as well. But basically, we are working with music as a tool to empower young people. So within that kind of setup, we have several projects that we initiate in order to achieve our goals. One of such projects is the Malawi Folk Songs project. You can move to the next slide. So the Malawi Folk Songs project, I would want to talk a little bit more about this because that's our archive where it's grounded. As an organization, we run a music academy, and one of the things that we encountered was that we didn't have local content to be used when we were developing our music curriculum. So much of the content we could have were actually from the West, and we couldn't find much, locally. You could find one here and there, but not, So as we are struggling to develop content for our music curriculum, we decided to actually initiate our own project called Folk Songs Project. And of course, with the help of UNESCO, as well as Ray Foundation from New Zealand, who supported us with funds. And with this, we had to go around the country to collect these folk songs from the villagers, from the owners of these songs. And as such, we have more than 300 folk songs that were actually collected from across the districts in Malawi. And out of those 300, we have about 180 videos that have been processed as well as edited. And what we are encouraging as well is that, we have been able to transcribe those folk songs into sheet music so that they can be used by our students in the schools and in the academy. And one of the things that we want is, to make this material very relevant to the contemporary, musicians or artists or the younger generation. Because one of the things that we encounter is that most of our young people, they go for the Western kind of material, which is very available through the internet as well as through the televisions. But because we don't have our local materials, it was difficult, to make them like or get attracted to their local content. So these videos are being made available to the students, to the artists, to the public, so that they can adapt them. And we have also led a project where we are adapting, the young people are actually making adaptations, making new arrangements and new music from the folk songs. And that is what attracted us. If we are to promote the Malawi folklore, then we can use different platforms and different media, including the submersive arts, so that we can promote, our musical heritage, but also, we can preserve, but also we can make it available for consumption to the wider global community. You can also show them the link for the database. One of the milestones for this project is that, all the materials that have been recorded on video as well as audio are now uploaded on a database called Malawi Folklore database, and you are free. It's accessible to the public, and I really would want to invite you all to actually, get to this database so that you can learn more. Now, behind each and every song that you will see, it's got a context, it's got a meaning. There is a narrative behind that song. Either it is teaching a lesson, or either it is of a certain social significance within the setup of the locality. It could be a celebration, a musical piece or dance. It could be about a funeral. It could be about, warning, the communities or the people of impending disasters. It could be about climate change. So it touches on a number of, thematic areas. And that's what makes it, a very unique repository of local content in terms of musical heritage of Malawi. And so we invite young people and artists to actually, the contemporary can interact with the past through this, folk songs. If they make the adaptations, then they're actually making those, those folk songs live again. And that's our huge motivation for this. You can go to the slides. The sixth slide. You will see that.
Sade, can you share the slides?
Yeah. So you will also see that, we have young people who are glued to the computers. They're actually accessing the database where we have these folklore, so that, young people can familiarize with themselves, and then they can make new composition. They can derive new content from there and make it a meaningful something within their localities and within their communities. As artists or as musicians, they can come up with new music that represents their musical heritage. And then you also see young people on that slide who are being taught these folk songs, and of course what it means to them today, unlike when the situation was in the past. So they derive their own meanings and interpret, what is in those folk songs to their current situation. Next, please. Yeah, and the one other milestone from this is that, it led to the establishment of a music festival. We call it Pakonde Ethno Music Festival, because of the content and the inspiration that was derived from this exercise. We thought that it was going to be a good idea that, at some point we can bring, this kind of of content, physically to one place where people can access and people can interact and people can enjoy, so basically that's the archive that we would like you to interact with. It's quite huge, and you are free to make selection of which folk songs and tales that are contained in this archive that you can actually work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear more about the archive. And we did share a link to the folk songs in the chat if anyone wants to check them out. I really recommend it because the songs are beautiful. And I think will give you a much richer sense of the possibilities. Okay, next we are going to, and by the way, we are going to have questions after all the archives have presented, but please just keep posting in the chat or in the Q&A. We will get to everything. Next, we're going to come to Christopher Grove and the team at the National Film and Video Archives. Christopher, over to you.
Hi. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah, you just have to go into presenter mode, presentation mode.
Okay, Santa?
You just need to hit play.
I see. Is it that one?
It's just because we can see all your slides.
I see.
There we go. Perfect.
Right, so I'm Christopher Grove from the National Film, Video and Sound Archives. I'm speaking today about the Moelman opnames or the Moelman recordings. Okay. So a little bit about the Film, Video and Sound Archives. We are a subsidiary of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, located in number 698 Stanzibababe Street in Pretoria, next to the Union Building Gardens. The National Film, Video and Sound Archives is mandated to collect, preserve, and maintain material made in or about South Africa. And we preserve material in multiple formats, for example, motion picture films, video recordings, television broadcasts, collections from private donors, state archives, etc. Been in existence since the year 1964. We have about 122,000 reels of film in various gauges, for example, 35mm, 16:8, and sometimes Super 8 as well. Material can be under something called technical detail, for example, black and white or color film, sound or silent, master copies, for example, picture negatives and sound negatives. And also, for example, we have something called optical sound, which is sound negatives without a picture, magnetic sound for special effects, etc. Some of the oldest examples in the Film Archives collection, for example, the oldest film in South Africa at all is a street scene in Cape Town from the year 1898. And it's about literally 1 minute in length. Other ones include the South African War or the Anglo-Boer War, also known as the First Media War, 1899 to 1902, to Voortrekkers 1960 feature film. The first sound films or even experiments date back to the year 1929, and the first sound films shown to the public would be Saumere and Mudiki, both from the year 1931. And then I'm just going to go through the rest of them. Earliest widescreen film, Jabulani Africa from 1950s, etc. The Moelman opnames, also known as the Moelman recordings, was a series of films shot on 35mm between 1960 and 1966 by Mr. Moelman, who worked in, at the time, the Department of Native Affairs, and also showcased South African life in the 1960s, between 1960 and 1966. It was also part of films that were originally digitized in our mass newsreels digitization project, October 2023 to October 2024. But we aim to and fix them correctly. Highlights from these can include Republic Day military parade, medical clinics for South African Blacks, footage of Idris Park, which is the so-called colored community, cause of women in traditional dress, forced removals and passbook checking, etc. So he virtually captured everything. Some screenshots from Mumon Opnames, Mumon Recordings, reel number 4. On the left-hand side, you see Black South Africans getting onto a non-Europeans bus at the time, because it was beginning of, well, at that time, apartheid had been in action for about 20 years. The checking of passbooks on the right-hand side. Examples of a Black South African domestic, well, at that time they called it a nanny, playing with the white children, because with my white madam, it's all very radical and stuff at the time, and getting onto the merry-go-round with the kids. Examples of from Mumon Opnames Reel 12, which is the Black South Africans preparing to leave their land during the time of the forced removals, or at the time they're assisting to demolish their own houses. And also on the right-hand side, putting all their furniture onto removal trucks and moving to places like Tembisa, Soweto, away from at the time, the white areas and stuff like that. Another shot from Reel 12, the rehousing, or the original one says rehouse, but it's rehousing, from Cato Manor to KwaMashu. And there's a picture of a lady making maize meal. On the right-hand side, from the same film, an area called Butterworth, at the time of the then Transkei, it was fiber making. Examples, I'm not going to show all of them because I have limited time. Mumon Opnames, there are 14 reels, and these are examples of some of them, but we can share the presentation at a later stage. There's just some examples, there are 14 altogether. All right. Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to do a little bit more. We go through 4 different processes. In inspection, each film is inspected for flaws, damaged perforations or sprockets, vinegar syndrome damage if it's there. Film cleaning, we can clean films in something called an ultrasonic film cleaner. Some special chemicals are used. Viewing table, our researchers, whenever they visit the archives, they can view footage on the viewing table, and it's a 4-in-1. It can do 8mm, Super 8, 16, and 35. You have to do like technical alterations. And then scanning of films on the Blackmagic Syntel scanner, which we also used for our digitization project. And films can be scanned in QuickTime, which is a preservation copy, and MPEG-4, which is a user copy, and then stored on LTO tape. Example of the reading room of the National Film, Video and Sound Archives, where people can do research and technical FA cards or Uniterm cards. Examples of film storage vaults at the Film, Video and Sound Archives. So they're like about more than 20. Examples of the 14 reels of the Mumon Opnames on 35mm film, including number 7, which is this is an example for Film Archives label on top of a film can. Examples are 16mm and 35mm films. Example of inspection table and cleaning machine. Viewing table, and also this finally our Blackmagic Syntel scanner, which can scan 35 and 16mm. Examples of before and after color correction and the capturing of film footage onto the scanner using DaVinci Resolve number 19. And then finally, example of LTO tape. We use this tape to store digitized video. And it's also archival standard for long-term preservation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As someone who has worked in film for most of my life, it's I get so excited seeing all those reels. It's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Kwatu. Do we have Kwatu in the room, Sade?
We do. Just going to prompt them via text.
Thank you. Just while we're waiting, I think I'll just answer one question. I did see one about whether, you get to work with all the archives or just one. It's just one. So you need to select in the application form, you do get to put two choices if you're applicable to them, because obviously the director has to be from or in the country where the archive is based. But you can pick up to two archives if you are passionate about two and there's project ideas you have for both. But otherwise it's just one, and you just work with that one archive. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. So we're just showing you all 6 archives now so you can get more information about all of them. Okay, over to Kwatu.
Good morning. I'm Michael Diver. I'm from Kwatu. Kwatu is situated on the west coast. It's an hour's drive north of Cape Town. Kwatu was established in 1999. It's a project, a joint venture project between a Swiss foundation and the San people of Southern Africa. And it has been going for the last 25, 26 years. This is a living and learning space. This is a place of responsible tourism. It's a training center for young people, and it's a museum and archives that's dedicated to the restitution and the preservation of culture of the San of Southern Africa. The archives that I'm going to present to you today has its origin in Angola and Namibia, in the southern Angola, northern Namibia during the 1970s and the 1980s. It's in these years that the Kon and the Kwe people, the hunters and gatherers that lived in that area, became part of a war in Angola and in Southwest Africa at the time. These people have lived here for centuries and centuries and have suddenly become part of a war that was not their war. Men were recruited to work as trackers in this war, had to lead and track in the frontiers of this war, and many lost their lives. This was a conflict that suddenly stopped in the late 1980s when independence came to Namibia, and when suddenly these people were airlifted and taken out of their traditional land and dropped it at a place called Smithstroft, right in the center of South Africa, in the middle of nowhere. They were left as refugees in tented camps for many decades to come after that. It is in these circumstances, it's right here where art became survival and healing, and where many of these men, of these ex-soldiers, became part of art projects. And where a group of San artists, men and women, started to create beautiful color paintings and lino cuts that really depicted a lifestyle of displacement and longing and memory and an old war that is past. And there was a collection of lino cuts of almost 600 lino cuts that was in the collection that found its way to Kwatu, and suddenly it appeared in 2019. We had all these lino cuts suddenly arriving with these most incredible images. Each lino cut is a story. It's a window into a time when San women and men try to make sense of their changing world. Some of these paintings of some of these images spoke about trauma, spoke about war, spoke about remembering freedom of hunting and gathering, and really speaks about a deep connection with nature. In this collection, we would love to create an exhibition that really honor these artists. Some of these people are still alive. They live in a community near Kimberley, and we would like to reconnect them with their art. We'd like to hear their voices. We would like to respect them. It's an exhibition that we would like to focus on reconciliation, on their voices and on their identity. We want to tell the story of this clash between the traditional lifestyle and a war. And we really are enthusiastic to make sure that the people are directly involved, that the collection that we have is in a very, very good condition. It's carefully archived, it's well looked after, and each one can be made available, each of these stories that are told on these lino cuts. And through the Future Past presentation, we really hope to bring the works to the front, to give it a life again. And through immersive storytelling, we would like to respect the artists and honor their journey at the time. And yeah, the last closing statement is it's an archive of human experience and survival and hope. And we really hope to bring a really an important message across in this exhibition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's so wonderful to see the lino cuts. I feel like I haven't seen them like this before. Yeah, beautiful and obviously also very hard story. And you know, one of the things I just wanted to flag is one of the things we're really conscious about with this project and with the relationships between the archives and the artists is that a lot of these archives hold living memory, and this is also about communities that are alive today, and that's something that we're really holding. You know, with all of these archives, that this is you know, this is not just boxes. This is people's stories, people's living history, which obviously makes this project really really exciting. But it also is something that we're all going to have to grapple with, and something to think about in your applications. Okay, let's move on. Lesotho Royal Archives, you are up next. Perfect, we can see it. Just go into presentation mode.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. My name is Maneo Ralibito. I'm the manager of the Royal Archives and Museum in Madzieng. So the first slide shows the name of the facility, which is Royal Archives, Museum and Information Center. Sorry about that. Okay, so the name of the institution is Royal Archives, Museum and Information Center. It's situated in Madzieng, Maseru, Lesotho. And it focuses on preserving documents, records, archives, museum objects, and all informational material that promote tangible and intangible cultural heritage relating to chieftainship and the monarch institution in Lesotho. The collection comprises items emanating from the offices of the paramount chiefs of Basutoland, now Lesotho, the king, as well as the material produced by the offices of the principal and gazetted chiefs in the kingdom. The material constitutes existing documentary and is in other formats, ranging from audio and visual, as well as praise poems. The institution was established as an NGO in March 2008 and was officially opened to the public in November 2012. So in that picture there, His Majesty King Letsie III was giving his speech on the day of the launch. The collection contains records, maybe specifically talking about what the collection is about, or what you find in the archives are records on chieftainship and succession to high office, court proceedings and judgments, boundary disputes and resolutions, traditional marriage systems and records, inheritance documentation and disputes, official speeches by the king and other paramount chiefs in the past, correspondence of national and international significance, especially communication between Lesotho and the UK, and diplomatic contacts with many other countries. We have books and serials, official administrative records covering colonial and post-colonial period. We have records of public works and financial records. In short, these were generated by the offices or from the offices of the paramount chiefs and other chiefs. So just to get an idea of what these archives are or how they look, Here we have provided images of some of the archives that we have, just few, but because we have a wider collection. So the first image is a letter written by Paramount Chief Letsie II in 1910 to the district commissioner in Mafeking. And the second image, that is from left to right, is a letter written in 1913 by Resident Commissioner Herbert Cecil Sloley to the Paramount Chief Prefect about the affairs of the Leribe district. And the last image is a collection of praise poems on King Letsie III, compiled by Professor Francis L. Rakotswan. This slide shows some of the pictures or some of the photographs that we have in our collection. The first or the top left picture is of King Moshoeshoe II there in the 1960s. And then there's a picture of the late Queen Mother Mama Hato Berenseiso at church during the baptismal of the current king. Then it also shows the Queen Mother there with the elderly, as well as the demolished palace. So this will be some of the collection that the artists would interact with. Now, in terms of significance, historically, the archives are evidence of the significant history. Sorry about that. Okay. Of the significant past in the history of Lesotho through the pre-colonial and post-colonial periods. They relate to judgments that were passed by the then appeal court at Matsieng, mainly prior to the introduction of modern court system in 1938. These archival records also cover events including health scares and plagues, animal diseases, and the need for interventions, especially in relation to such diseases. Of historical significance as well is the coverage of the British rule over the Basutoland Protectorate, that also centered around Lesotho's incorporation into the Union of South Africa. In terms of cultural and social significance, the archives show the origins of the Basotho nationhood, the monarchy, and the succession to the throne. The collection also depicts a social, cultural process that Basotho have gone through and a unique heritage that the Basotho value. The material bears evidence of the cultural practices and traditions of the Basotho. In the main, being chieftainship, kinship, and monarchy, or the form of governance that has been in place for more than a bicentenary. Royal Archives, Museum and Information Center continues to provide a lesson on who the Basotho are as defined in all social aspects, that being educational, informative, entertaining, and many more. Just to wrap up, I suppose here we just wanted to give the artists and creatives other sources or resources that they can tap into to learn more about the facility and the collection. So there's that link there, we can share it in the chat, and as well as our Facebook page so that they can learn more about us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And yeah, Manea, if you wouldn't mind dropping those links in the chat, if you've got them to hand, that would be really helpful. Yeah, that would be great. I think any links that people can kind of look through, it's just so helpful as people are formulating their ideas. Okay, we've got one more archive and then we're going to get to the questions. So last but not least, Iziko, you are up.
Thank you very much, Jay. Just give me a minute to get this presentation up.
Of course.
And just let me know if you can see the presentation. I'm just waiting for it to load.
Yeah, we can see the slides, just not presentation mode. There we go. Perfect. Off you go.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody, for attending today. I'm very happy to and excited to be speaking to you about this project. It is entitled Amanzi Africa, an exhibition coming up in our 26-27 financial year. And just to say that the exhibition itself focuses on water and therefore connects nature, culture, and memory in terms of accessing our archives and collections. My name is Wayne Florence. I'm the Director of Research and Exhibitions. ISICO is very different from any other institution in South Africa in that we've got cross-cutting departments. Research and exhibition spans across art, social history, and natural sciences. And so we have this wonderful opportunity to do multidisciplinary work in our museums. ISICO is a agency of the government, sorry, of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture in South Africa, and we are the custodians of 12 sites, museum sites, collection sites, etc. And our vision is to be African museums of excellence that empower and inspire all people to celebrate and respect our diverse heritage. The emphasis is very much there in terms of being inclusive. The focal site of the exhibition will be at the ISICO South African Museum, which I'm very happy to tell you that we have a 200-year history. We are celebrating our bicentenary this year. And so we are the oldest and largest museum in South Africa and East Southern Africa, and even this sub-Saharan Africa. So it has a 200-year-old history. It's situated in Cape Town at the foot of Table Mountain at the top of the historic Company Gardens. And while we predominantly have been preoccupied with, as a research institution, a foundational institution that documents biodiversity, paleontology, and natural sciences, in its early days, the museum had expanded already into cultural collections. Okay, some of them unethical, as some of you would know. But by and large, artworks, cultural objects, etc., form part of the collections today. We became ISICO, Museums of South Africa, later on, and absorbed some other museums in terms of the South African Cultural History Museum, the South African National Gallery. In fact, the South African National Gallery's beginnings actually start in the South African Museum. I think it's important to give you this context of where we've come from. We were a fairly colonial institution, and over the last couple of years, we've been reimagining not only our exhibitions, but our practices, our collections practices, acquisitions practices, filling in gaps due to unethical behavior on our part. And so we use these principles of decolonizing, being consultative, being inclusive, promoting activism, awareness, stewardship, representativity towards social cohesion and nation building, all priorities for our country and our departments that we support. So on the top left, you'll see an image of the old Wunderkamer being a colonial institution. This is the typical beginnings of our collections where they were displayed for aesthetic purposes. And even in our mid-history, you'll see that some of our exhibitions on the right-hand side there, you'll see the mammal hall where, everything is presented in a taxonomic way. Today, of course, we have exhibitions that are far more enriching, inclusive, and also, have reimagined what the taxonomic object or the object actually should be in terms of providing some interpretation, but then also allowing the public to have a conversation with our exhibitions and with the content that we are delivering. So just some of them hidden wonders of the South African Museum highlights the hidden stories behind the collection objects, and we have over 10 million of them in our collections and archives and associated archives. Humanity takes the story of human evolution and it decolonizes it in a manner, but also presents it, from not as the white male scientist view that is very race-based science and moves away from that narrative. Then, of course, we have the ISAM Stories of Change, which is our 200th-year exhibition where we are bringing our archives out for the public to see them and be behind the scenes without them actually being behind the scenes. They are able to view our collections in big shop front windows. and archives, okay? And then, of course, the Sea and Us, which is very relevant to Amanzi Africa because it's in the same type of exhibition hall or very close by, which looks at people and the sea, but also takes the approach of not just showing us what the colonial history has been, but also exhibits some pre-colonial utilization by hunter-gatherers, etc., that narratives that were not previously told in our museum. Getting to Amanzi Africa, basically, why Amanzi matters is because, you know, it takes this ecological, cultural, and spiritual relationships, and then puts them against the backdrop of the importance of water, connects our past and present concerns about climate change and water justice, etc., but also showcases indigenous knowledge systems alongside scientific perspectives, something that we are sorely lacking in South Africa and in the region, and that we are trying to get more into. The Amanzi Africa Archives integrates natural history specimens. I'll show you some of them in a minute. Aquatic specimens, fossils, estuarine environments, marine invertebrates, etc. Cultural objects, artifacts, materials of water rituals and spiritual practice, oral histories, indigenous narratives on sacred rivers and springs, and then also archival records, including photographs, expedition notes, etc. So just looking at some of our collections, I thought it would be quite cool to give you a diverse view of what we've got in our collections. Biodiversity collections, the aquatic collections include specimens of South Africa's aquatic biodiversity, including crustaceans, fishes, etc. And we have a multitude of catalog books and field notes and scientific illustrations, etc., all associated with the collections there. And then, of course, our vertebrate collections include a multitude of mammals, marine mammals, etc., that articulate with watering holes. Some of them are marine organisms, etc. Paleontology collections, again here up on the west coast, close by where Kwatu is. We have Langebaan Weg, and we've managed to recreate artistically past environments from there using scientific knowledge. So there's wonderful examples of the artistic expression there. Of our scientists are actually working with artists to recreate past environments, all pertinent to things like climate change and stewardship of them. Then, of course, in our archaeological collections, we have multiple cultural objects, etc. Some of them pre-colonial in nature, most of them, of course. And what I haven't shown you here is our social history collections, and I'm not going to show you that today, but we have a multitude of different cultural objects, African cultural objects, etc., textiles, all sorts of things in our archives. So when I close my eyes at night as a scientist, this is what I see in terms of an artistic expression of biodiversity, the heritage of that, incorporating indigenous knowledge, etc. And as part of the Imanzi Africa exhibition, we would like an immersive experience that actually is a component of the exhibition, not the entire exhibition, if you understand. And so we feel that this should be centered around Cape Town. And Cape Town has a long history dating back to pre-colonial history also, where Cape Town was called Camisa by indigenous people or hunter-gatherers, etc., and meaning sweet waters. And, it referred to all the streams and the little rivers that Cape Town actually has to offer. So Cape Town has a large catchment area for water. Rivers, lakes, streams stemming from Table Mountain, flowing down to our two oceans. Okay, along the way, there are several riverine systems, estuarine systems that are transition zones between rivers and the oceans. Diversity of water bodies actually translate to a massive diversity of biodiversity and a huge or a significant cultural interaction there then in terms of people's dependence on the biodiversity and water, historically, both spatially and then also temporally through time. Yeah. So we would like artists that can reinterpret our collections to reveal interconnectedness of people and nature. They can engage audiences with multi-sensory interventions through Africa's water stories, or specifically Cape Town's water stories. And then also the exhibition will be hosted in the South African Museum. And it is a site of science, culture, and technology. I will stop there and take questions then. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Okay, that is all 6 archives. Thank you, everyone, so much for your presentations. This has taken most of the webinar, but as I'm sure you all appreciate, like, we really wanted you to hear from the archives directly. So this really, is the meat of the webinar, if you like. But we do have a little bit of time for questions. So maybe I'll just quickly answer some of the more just logistical questions, and then we can dive into some of the others, Mkhlali, if that works for you.
Yeah, I think we can start off with like the generic questions that speak to the archive, the artist applications, and
Yeah.
then any questions directed at the archives will
Okay.
direct.
That's great. So
Okay.
I've made notes of a couple of those, Mkhlali. So why don't I just dig into them, and then if I've missed any out, you can let me know.
Okay.
So the first thing is, we're not asking for budgets. We felt like it wasn't fair to ask you to budget for something at this stage. What we will do is ask the projects that go to the shortlist. We will ask them for a initial budget, a preliminary budget. Obviously, we know that will change as the project develops, and that will be part of the first stage for the projects that are selected. But yes, at this stage, you do not need to submit a budget. We just want to get a sense of what it is that you would create. So that's point number one. The second one is on the experience required. So in terms of the trainee producer, we're very flexible about that experience. Because obviously we understand that this is a trainee position. This is part of the capacity building program that we are running as part of this project. There will be a whole program to really upskill that trainee producer. And I will say that this program we're putting together will also be useful for everyone else on the team, including the producer, because we're going to have all these incredible speakers from Southern Africa and internationally. So, I think that's something that everyone will benefit from. But we ideally would like someone who has at least a little bit of production experience, even if it's very junior. But it might also be, trainee experience, like maybe college experience in film or media or immersive arts, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, for the trainee producer, it could be in another field, and they're switching over into this field. For everyone else, I would say it's in the balance. So this is not a project for first timers. It's going to be incredibly fast turnaround. We are expecting production values to be really high. So we definitely don't want people doing things for the first time. That said, we also understand that there might be a balance within your team. So I think one of the questions is, if the director has film experience or other media experience, but not immersive, but the creative technologist has lots of immersive experience, that absolutely that could balance it out. So I think you just need to think about the experience within your teams. But everyone needs to have at least 3 years experience, in media fields. But we understand that the immersive space in Southern Africa is not well funded. The infrastructure is not all there. So we know that a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to necessarily have 3 years strictly in immersive, and we will absolutely take that into account. So I would say just think about the balance in your team. Do you have enough expertise in the people you're applying with to do a project like this? And I think as long as the balance is there, you're in good stead. And we know that, the chances that all 3 of you have got 3 solid years experience in making immersive work, that might be too much to ask for. So I hope that answers that one. And then just in terms of visiting the archives before applying, I would just note that that is not possible for all the archives. right? A lot of these archives are very small. There isn't a lot of capacity. So I think that's on a case-by-case basis. But I definitely wouldn't expect to go and see the archive before you apply. We're doing this webinar so that you can get a sense of what is in the archive, and then we really just need you to kind of come up with a project idea based on what you've seen today, based on the information you have. So that's really how we're seeing this, because we can't be flooding the archives with requests from everyone who wants to apply. And I hope that everyone understands that. Okay, Mkhlali, are there any other general questions that I've skipped?
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of questions that came in earlier. So one from Tantla Michael, who asked, how can a solo digital artist connect with a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had that from a few people. I think with that, you're going to have to tap into networks like We Are VR, would be one, that you could, see if there's anyone there. I know I've already seen some messages on there. Lauren, I don't know if there are other resources that we can connect people to. It's not something that we can do, I'm afraid, because we don't have the capacity to put teams together.
I do think in this chat now, if you have a profile or email that you want to share with everyone else, please go ahead. But other than that, we are a little bit limited as well.
Yeah, so sorry, it's just not part of the scope of this project. We don't have the capacity to do that. So I think you just really need to tap into networks that currently exist, groups that are out there in immersive, and try and connect that way. Or, as Lauren says, you can pop your profile into the chat and say, I'm looking for a director or a producer or whatever it is you're looking for. Because this is obviously a great network right here. Okay, Mkhlali?
Yes. Okay, our next question is from Kamo T. Since our access is limited during the application process, how open quote strict close quote are our topics or projects? If we get selected and our interest changes once we get more access, can our projects change? I'm assuming it's dependent on how the institutions feel, but I just want to understand how flexible things might be.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So listen, we understand that projects always change. Even if you have been in the archive for a month, your project can shift, right? That is part of the artistic process. So we are open to that. I think what we really do want to see in your application is obviously the strength of your team, the fact that you're eligible, so that you're in the right country, et cetera, et cetera. We want to see that you can travel to the archive, because that is really important. And then we want to see the way that you are thinking about how this project could be expressed in an immersive format. And we've put a bunch of different formats, by the way, on the application, the call for entry. So we're not just restricting this to VR and AR. It could be all sorts of projection mapping, haptics, sensory experiences, spatial sound, et cetera, et cetera. We want to see how you are thinking about how you could take this archive and create something really engaging for a public, for an audience, and something that would really work for the archive as well. And I will say that for the projects that are selected, there will be a period where you and the archives will be working together before we get to the contracts being signed, where you're basically making sure that everyone's on the same page, that you're being respectful to the archives, the content of the archives, that it's ethical. So there will be a little bit of back and forth, collaboration, co-creation. So at this point, we really just want to see how you're thinking about what is possible. And yes, if that does shift a little bit, or even a lot, I think we are open to that.
Okay. So we have two similar questions. Basically, Kamo T and Indigen are trying to find out that can one person be a part of two different teams? So I see Indigen here in the chat box says that they've been asked by another organization to be part of their team as a producer for the same archive. Will this jeopardize the application, or shall I submit the application under my organization only?
So listen, I would say no one's going to have the capacity to work on two projects in this timeline. It's just not going to be possible. So I would say I personally would suggest that you don't do that. If you have an organization and there are multiple people, so you can split the the load, then yeah, there's absolutely no reason why an organization can't be across two projects. But individual, like if there's a producer, for example, if you're a producer and you are in on two teams, I think that would then be pitting those teams against each other, right? So that's something to think about because I don't think we would have the same person on two teams because it's too much work in too short a period. It's also why we're asking for experienced teams because all these projects have to be delivered by the end of August 2026. And as you know, we've got Christmas coming up towards us very quickly. So there really isn't going to be a lot of time for production. So we really need teams that can move fast and work tightly together as a unit.
Okay. I want us to move to the Q&A chat box, which is one more question that came in earlier from Siwapiu and Bofu. So they're asking, in the brief for the open call, it specifies all team members have to have 3 years worth of experience in the respective fields, with the exception of the trainee being under the age of 30 and doesn't need as much experience. Does that imply all other team members have to be over 30 years of age? And what kind of education and professional experience must they have?
Yeah, so I think I answered some of that earlier, but yes, no, that the other team members can be any age. The reason the trainee producers need to be under 30 is this is a particular capacity building program for youth, for younger, for like youth under the age of 30. So that's why there's an age requirement there. Everyone else can be any age over the age of 18. Obviously, with 3 years experience, we're not expecting too many 18-year-olds. But we just, in terms of the experience, we just want to see that you can get this project done. So, like I said, it will probably be in the balance of the teams. I mean, it would be amazing to have a team where everyone's got 3 years solid immersive experience. But I think as long as you show as a director, you've got 3 years of directing, and the technologist has been able to do projects like this, and the producer, look, I'll be honest, we know that there's a real dearth of producers in immersive. There aren't a lot of people who have the skills to produce, who have the skills or experience producing in immersive. So I think just strong producing credits is what we're looking for there. It doesn't necessarily have to be immersive. So it'll be in the balance of the team overall.
Okay. This question was also partially answered, but I'm going to read it out in any case. Anonymous asked, is it okay if the producer and producing assistant have experience in film and TV, but not immersive media per se? But if other team members, say the tech lead and director, have experience in immersive media, is that fine? Additionally, is
Yeah.
it okay if the tech lead has extensive experience in immersive media, but the director and producer have experience in related media such as film, TV, or media art, but not specifically immersive technologies?
Yeah. So I think this is a very common question, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that we recognize that there hasn't been a lot of support or funding for the immersive sector. So there just hasn't been a lot of opportunities for people to actually get the experience, right? So that's why I think we're just looking for the balance in the teams. And yes, to answer your question specifically, that should be totally fine. So I would say absolutely, as long as you've got 3 years of experience in media, please go ahead and apply. And if you can get some balance in the teams, that's great. If you've got a strong technologist who's done an immersive project, and maybe the director is a film director, I think that's that's a pretty strong team. So yes, we will absolutely take that into consideration.
Yeah, so we have 2 questions directed at the archives and just 2 questions, like general questions that speak to the artist open call. And the first one is, can a team director be from outside Africa, and is co-directing allowed?
Yeah, I think we'd be open to co-directing. The director can't be from outside of Africa. In fact, no one from the team can be from outside of Africa. So everyone on the team has to be based in Africa. The director has to be either from or in the country where the archive is based, and they must be able to travel to the archive easily. So we're ideally looking for directors who are in the country where the archive is based. The rest of the team members can be based anywhere in Africa, so you can have remote teams if you need to. But obviously, we will take that into consideration because you will need to be able to work together on this project in a short time frame. So obviously, teams that are in the same country and can work together would be preferable.
Okay. The two questions we have left are directed at Iziko. So maybe Dr. Florence, if you can stand by for the two questions. The first one is, hi Wayne, it's Tulani from Futuristic Films. Can we collaborate with Iziko on other archives other than the water presentation, especially in archives like field photographs from historic expeditions with African arts?
Thank you, Ms. Lali, for that question. I think Iziko would be open to any other collaborations that stem from this process. In short, yes. The only thing that we need to then understand is, would this be a partnership? Would it be as a service provider, etc., which invokes all sorts of other procurement compliance issues. But yeah, we would be open to any other collaborations beyond this project, if that's what I'm understanding, or if they're asking beyond this project.
Right, thank you. And the last question is, I have a question for Iziko Museums. How much archival data information would the selected team be provided? Knowing this will help creating an appropriate team.
Okay, Iziko has a open access policy. We have about 800,000 records in our database for natural sciences, and another 400,000 or so for cultural and art objects. So we would be making all of that available if needed. But yeah, it really depends on where Manzi Africa goes, in terms of everything is very conceptual at the moment. And so we haven't even selecting objects yet. And I think that process will probably take another 3 months or so before we get to the point where we have a comprehensive digital archive that we can share. But yeah, we would share everything as needed.
All right,
And
thank you
just
so
to go back, Miflali, sorry, just to go back to Tulani's question, because I think that also might be about, like, can you work with other archives within these archive institutions? We are open to that to a certain extent, but obviously it kind of depends, honestly, on the institutions. Like in this case, Iziko are already doing this Amanzi E Africa exhibition, and so this would be part of that exhibition. So I think it kind of depends on the archive. We're not ruling it out. But I would say ideally you really should be focusing on the archives that have been presented today.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
And I also didn't quite answer the code. The co-directing, we absolutely are open to that, as long as, again, you are meeting the requirements. So both co-directors would need to be from Africa, and at least one would need to be in the country and from the country where the archive is based.
And then if I can ask that we just go over the NFVSA questions. I know they were answered via text, but for people who are watching this recording afterwards, it might be helpful to have that information too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll note that, Laura. Thank you. Ingrid, let's just go back also to the question about if the director should be from Africa. So the person asked a follow-up question, and this can be anywhere in Africa, right? Not just Southern Africa, because the call, I guess,
The director has to be from the country where the archive is based. The director. The other team members can be anywhere in Africa. So you can have remote teams, but everyone that you are applying with needs to be living and working in Africa.
Okay.
So, but the director has to be in the country or from the country where the archive is based, and able to travel to the archive easily, obviously.
Right. And we have a question from Johnny Miller. Will Electric South award one grant per archive or multiple? Will the awarded teams be expected to work together per archive?
No, so we're going to select 6 teams, 6 artist teams, one for each archive. So, you will apply with the archive you want to work with, and then we'll say, John, you are going to work with, you've selected to work with Iziko. Congratulations, the two of you are working together. And then there will be a process where we will work with you as you figure out how you're going to work together, and contract and budget and schedule and all the rest of it. But it's one team per archive, and all 6 archives will be in this project. So each archive that presented today will have one immersive team working with them. So by the end of August, we will have one immersive project from each of these 6 archives. And I should also mention that as part of this project, there will be an installation either at the archive or in a partner institution to the archive. So somewhere nearby, a museum, library, cultural venue. So all of this work will be presented for at least 3 months in the latter half of the year.
Okay. So we have about 4 minutes left. Let's just quickly go through the questions that have been answered, and then we'll just see how much time we can squeeze in the ones that have already been answered, directed at the archives earlier. Another question is co-funding a project allowed or even advantageous, i.e., if an individual or team brings a bit of funding to add to the funding allocation of a project?
Yeah, Lauren, do you want to answer this? Because I think it's not, yeah, we are absolutely open to that.
You answered it, Ingrid.
Yeah, yeah, we are very open to that. And there is also going to be a mobility program as part of this project to France. And the idea with that is also to look for collaborations potentially for the exhibition. And that will take place in like around April of next year. So for the artists that are selected, some of that team and some of the archives will travel to France as part of this project. So yes, you can come with additional resources. You can raise additional resources as you go through the project. We're open to all of that. And some of the archives will also be presenting additional resources, right? It depends on the archive. So yes, all of that is on the table.
But you won't not be selected if you don't have financial backing behind you as well. Linda, you have your hand up.
Yeah, can I maybe just respond to some of the things that have been said? And I hadn't planned to respond to this, but after you just said this now, could we maybe say that additional funding, although welcome, would maybe need to go through some kind of approval? I'm just aware that, look, we're a human rights organization, and there might be certain funding from certain places, spaces, companies that might not align with us, So although obviously in general, yes, money is welcome, but maybe just to put a little caveat in there that, like, we might not take money from.
Absolutely.
Trump.
No, that's a really good point. Thank you, Linda. No, of course, that's a really good point. Yes, money, yeah, not all money is, yes, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, and this is where, like, I know I've said it before, but I will say it again, is, the artist teams are the artists, and you will be coming up with the idea and really, creating that project. But this is a collaboration with the archives, and there is going to be give and take, right? You can't just do whatever you like with these precious archives. So we really do need everyone. This is for the archives and the artists who are applying. Everyone needs to be open to the idea that there is going to have to be, collaboration means sometimes compromise. And it means, like Linda said, it doesn't mean that you can kind of come with any money or any partnerships and it'll be totally fine. There's going to be, there's going to have to be a lot of give and take and sort of figuring this stuff out so that everyone's happy, so that the archives are respected, so that the institutions are happy, so that the artists feel free. Everyone's needs will need to be balanced. And Kanda, who's on this call, Kanda, do you want to just say hello so everyone can see your face? Sorry to pick on you, son. So Kanda will be working with Electric South to make sure that that is the case. So she will be working hand in hand with the archives and especially with the artists who are selected to really make sure that this process is, efficient and that all the things that I just mentioned are really handled with care. So we will be on top of this and really helping you through the process, and Kanda will be managing that.
So sorry, that actually wasn't what I initially wanted to talk about. It just came up as a question. So somebody mentioned access to some of the archival materials in while they prepare their applications. And we did submit materials onto a Google Drive folder. So I just maybe thought that should be mentioned. And then I also just wanted to check from my side, are those Google Drive folders, when potential applicants access them, is that as a view only? Because I suppose, I'd put up film footage and stuff, and that can't just be downloaded and used. So yeah, maybe just a bit of clarity about these Google Drive folders for us and the applicants. Thanks.
We were using those Google Drive folders for our own, for us to create the call, Linda. So we haven't actually made those available to anyone. But I mean, we could do that. But obviously, like you say, like just not like view only. So Matlali, maybe that's something we can do after this webinar, is just figure out what we can make available and how to restrict it.
All right, sounds good. Okay, we have a couple of more questions. Just try get through them. So can someone...
Sorry, I've got my hand up. Is it possible to just come in on Linda's point quickly also before we proceed?
Yeah, of course.
So I think many of our institutions are public institutions also. And so we have certain constraints in terms of compliance also. And one of those is also around ethical considerations. Okay. For instance, we have an open access policy to the use of our collections, our archives, but for non-commercial purposes. And so if there are any other follow-up commercial activities that result from this, then those will be to be negotiated with the archives and collections, number one. My second point was around ethical considerations again, when it comes to, and I think this would also be important for Kwatu, when it comes to the information and data sovereignty of the information that's being used for indigenous knowledge systems, as an example, for inspiration for artworks. We will just need to be very, very careful that those are also subjected to institutional policy around the use of those, so that we protect the rights of indigenous communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Wayne. Absolutely. And this is where Candor will really be helping all parties through the process. The contracting will look different depending on, which archives are involved. And yeah, we will be taking all of that into consideration as we, devise a contract agreement that works for all parties. And one of the things I want to say now is we are really invested as IFAS and Electric South in making sure that this project is not extractive on anyone. So that the archives are respected, so that the communities are respected, and so that the artists are respected. And we're really going to work together to make sure that we can come up with contracts and agreements and work processes that work like that. We think that this is actually an extraordinary opportunity to do that, as we go through this process. Matlali?
All right. Next question is, can someone from Cape Town, for example, look at Lesotho or Malawi projects? I understand that the director must be based in those regions, correct?
The director needs to be from those regions. They could be based, for example, you could have a director from Lesotho who's based in Johannesburg. Very easy to get to Lesotho from Joburg. We would definitely consider that. So the director needs to be from the country where the archive is based, or living in the country where the archive is based. And like I said, all other members just need to be based in Africa and able to work together as a team.
Okay. And the next question is, are there restrictions regarding the use of archival footage for derivative works? For example, blending and or editing old archive video with new video?
Yeah, there aren't restrictions per se, but I think that is where, like, respecting the archives and really thinking about how the archives are represented and making sure they're not misrepresented is going to come into play. So I think we would have to consider that on a case-by-case basis. But I would just say for everyone, I mean, especially with AI, and everything now, we absolutely we want creative interpretation. We do not want misrepresentation or anything that will make the archivists feel uncomfortable. So that's where there's going to have to be a balance.
Yeah. And one last question. Hi, Nathan. I'm from Iziko. We can pull. I'm not entirely sure if maybe this was the answer by Dr. Florence.
It was.
It's about just pulling data for the teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would
Should
be,
we?
I think, if you're selected.
Okay. Should we still go through the answered questions from earlier, or
We don't have a lot of time. I wonder if we
yeah.
should.
We are going to keep updating our Q&A on the Electric South website, so we can add those there. But I do think, Ingrid, it's just quick to chat 30 seconds about next steps when people will be notified.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be closing the call, like as I said, on the 9th of November. We will be selecting projects by the end of November. We have a selection process where we'll shortlist the projects that are shortlisted. We will then do an interview with you. And at that point, we will be asking for a budget, even if it's a rough budget. We understand, you won't know everything, but we will want to have a sense of how you are thinking about budgeting this project. So um, when it comes to, sorry, let me actually look at my dates so that I'm not giving you vague ideas here. So we will be asking for interviews somewhere around the 20th of November. And then the interviews we'll be in touch with you for the shortlisted candidates, and the interviews will take place on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of November. So if you are shortlisted, you will probably hear from us then. And we will expect a budget at that point so we can discuss in a little bit more detail your plans. And then we will have a jury meeting at the end of November and final selections will be made.